Okay, welcome to Cardboard Hunter. I'm Sterling. Today we have Acquire defending its title for greatest stock trading, building placing, capitalist pandering game of all time. One of my favorite classics. And we're going to go through the three challengers, as today is a cage match, challenging Acquire to remake it, nay, bastardize it in their own image. We have Shark, we have Dawn of Ulos, and Big Boss. Can any of these games dethrone the classic? So let's get into it. This 1963 masterpiece, Acquire, has been reprinted more times than I care to properly research. Going all the way back from the 3M edition, which had the wooden components that were just super satisfying and clunky, all the way to the most recent edition, which I guess would be the 2034 Games Workshop Deluxe version. What's that? Oh, we're only in 2023 right now. Gotcha. That would make it the Renegade Studios edition then. I've owned a few copies of Acquire myself. My personal favorite is the 1999 Avalon Hill version. Hey, it's Sterling from Post. I want to tell you to stick around to the end of the video, and I'm going to give you some details about how you can win this copy of Bus, the Deluxe 20th Anniversary from Splotter and Capstone Games, new in shrink. Very expensive, very rare game. One of the greatest games ever made. I'm going to give this away to one of my lucky subscribers. So stick around to the end of the video and get the details on how to win this thing. So what makes Acquire so great? Acquire is a perfectly synthesized stock trading, no added fluff, great game, leaving plenty of room for the experience to be that social experience, as I've talked about in the previous video. The players will be buying and selling stock in 7 different businesses. I'll show you what these look like. The biggest upset is when your friend has been eating up stocks in a certain business, just grinning ear to ear, long-term vision in mind, 8 tiles deep, and you've been holding the perfect piece for just the right moment. Oh my God. Oh my God. Your friend's corporation crumbles beneath the weight of a true empire, 13 tiles deep, devouring dreams, aspirations, college tuitions, all the same, and making you a pretty hefty profit at the same time. If you can't tell, it's a very cutthroat game, which is not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't say this is like a Splotter game by any means. It's not that level of cutthroat, but you know, it is definitely for those groups that are comfortable with a little head-to-head and a little take that. This game has a good deal of that. But it's also like, you know, a lot of games that have that kind of take that, if it's kind of built into the game, it doesn't tend to feel that mean, whereas some games that aren't necessarily designed to be take that, but they give you an advantage if you do, those feel meaner. So what are Acquire's shortcomings? Well, like I said, it's a fairly competitive in-your-face game. The board, for all my bragging, certainly leaves a bit to be desired compared to some newer modern board games, admittedly. And again, I love these clanky plastic pieces, but these are supposed to be buildings. And most modern games do buildings better. You know, obviously they are effective for what they're meant to do, but they kind of just look like knockoff Legos, if I'm being honest. Next shortcoming: paper money. Yep, we all hate to hear it. If you're like me, you may have some iron clays or some other stand-ins for your board games with paper money, and you can certainly do that with Acquire. Next shortcoming: randomness.
Why would you do that? That's just what I do! Wild card, bitches! What? Yeah!
This game was made before that was some huge sin of board games. And typically as games mature and you get newer editions, even reprints, I like to see some streamlining and some randomness taken out of older games. This game is basically as random as it ever was, but I will say this game is not so serious that I feel like it hurts it. Now, I'm not completely defending its randomness. I'm just saying this game is a little bit on the comical side as you're playing it, and it's kind of meant to be that. So I don't find myself min-maxing and getting too upset about the randomness. I still thoroughly love the game. Would I love the game a little more if it had a little less randomness? Of course I would. But today we're going to focus on 3 very specific successors, if that's the right word to use. So, Challenger 1, Big Boss. You got a little ding in it. It happens. Also, this is one of those games that they just put the tape on it. It doesn't come in shrink wrap. I absolutely hate that. Funko, if you want us to take you serious, take your game serious. Big Boss is a passion project of a truly game designing tyrant, Wolfgang Kramer. The Funko's 2023 reprint is very accessible. You can find it on Amazon, pretty cheap. You can find it at most game shops these days. May even be able to find it at a few big box stores, to be honest, since it is Funko. This game was originally released in 1994, German only. And if I'm being honest, I don't think it was ever meant to be a commercial project. And it's kind of hard to find that kind of information, and I'll explain what I mean. The pieces are beautiful. Definitely better building pieces than Acquire. What I mean by the game not necessarily being a commercialized product is this game feels like it was kind of just designed because he loved Acquire. I mean, if you even read the rule book, it has a little history section and pays homage to Acquire. It seems like him and his group were huge Acquire fans, like most game designers would have been at that time. And they just kind of had a house-ruled version of the game. And he probably just built upon it until, probably played it at some conventions. And finally, one of the publishers he worked with was like, hey, this is really cool. We should try to publish this. And I'll say this. I am always down for a game of Big Boss if I'm in a game shop or someone comes over and they really want to crack this one out. I will play. Fairly simple to learn, simple to teach, and it is a fun game. That being said, I would never play this over Acquire. If someone said, do you want to play Acquire or Big Boss? Unless I had just been cramming Acquire so much, even then, I'd suggest something else. So, Big Boss, who is it for? I would say if your group plays a lot of Acquire and loves Acquire, Big Boss is an opportunity to play Acquire slightly different. I do like, how it's less randomized because you're kind of getting to choose some of your cards as you lay out the cards to choose from. You have a limited selection. It's not completely grabbing at chance. So though there is still some random factor here, it certainly gives you more control than Acquire. So it also, there's some incentives in this game for even building up, a corporation that clearly one of your opponents is better vested into. And that's cool because it feels like if all you really have is, some options to place and build up your opponents, that might feel like, oh, well, now all I can do is help my opponent. That's kind of, not fun. No, you do reap some rewards, and it doesn't hurt you that much in the long run. So it works at what it's trying to do. That being said, I find Big Boss takes a little of the bite out of Acquire that makes Acquire such a great game. You're not completely trying to cut out your opponents. There is this level of collaboration on some businesses that you're not even well vested into and your opponents are. So it certainly makes a more friendly game. I think the table presence is prettier. I love the look of these building pieces. I love the fact they build up, makes them look more like buildings. And as you really fill up the board, I mean, you really start to have this crazy skyline. So beautiful table presence. I will give Funko that. They could have went for a little bigger box to make a bigger board. But honestly, the board is kind of the perfect size for what they're trying to do. So I'm not going to dock them for that. In fact, it's sometimes nice to have an easier to travel box. This one is a little outside of the throw it in a suitcase size, but it's certainly easier than Acquire. I'm not going to grab it right now. My problem is Acquire is meant to be a little aggressive. It's a stock trading game. Wolf of Wall Street. You're trying to be a little take that in your face. And the fact that Big Boss is in that same genre, yet it takes a lot of that bite away, I kind of feel like they missed the point here. And let me backtrack that, because it's not that I think Wolfgang Kramer missed the point. It's that he probably was making a game that was a little funner to play for some people that didn't like that bite of Acquire. Like I said, I don't think this was ever meant to be this huge, giant game like Funko is trying to make it. So I think for what it is, it's a complete success. But if I'm being honest with you, this is a cool alternative way to play Acquire. And some people recommend this even over Acquire. And I think Wolfgang Kramer himself would laugh at them. I don't think he would even recommend this as a alternative to Acquire, especially if you've never played Acquire. It's just, it's not the Acquire killer. It's honestly not even close. I mean, this is Big Boss enters the ring and gets obliterated. Doesn't even make it through the first round. They carry it out in the stretcher. So first round is going to Acquire. All right, moving on to the most recent challenger. Dawn of Ulos. This Jason Lentz game published by Thunderworks Games is a fantasy theme implementation of the classic stock trading, building, placing game, which very fascinating concept. I was very much into the idea when someone first suggested I take a look at this. So instead of corporations, what you have are these fantasy factions. And all of the factions have these asymmetrical abilities also. All of the races have pretty cool abilities. None of them, to me, I've played and said, I think I'm going to leave that one out next time. I usually just kind of grab a handful of them at random, and they're all pretty fun. I love the 3D miniatures. I would love to get around to actually painting these. I've seen some other people paint them, and they look gorgeous. What's really cool about the miniatures is they come with information about how they play. So you got the little tile that your miniature's on, and then you have the tile here where it shows the grass area and the forest area. They all show mountain, forest, same thing, grassland, forest, and they're all different. You know, mountain trees for what are these? Your orcs. So, but what's cool about that is the terrains that they actually benefit from in game. So it's cool to have a miniature that even conveys that information. So if I kind of place it near the trees in the grassland, then it's going to benefit me, which is good because from an instant I can see it on the board and say, okay, I need more grass and plains if I'm going to build up that faction. So I thought that was a really cool touch how they did that. And I'll be honest, those little asymmetric abilities, the miniatures, it's a pretty big win over Acquire. The first swing out of the gate, Dawn of Ulos lands a solid haymaker. I also love these modular boards where you kind of switch them up every time, so the map's never identical. That's another solid win, you know? With Acquire, your board basically is, you know, just these numerical, alphabetical squares, and you're kind of placing them wherever you have the proper piece. What's cool about Dawn of Ulos is you just have these tiles with 2 types of territory on them, and you can place it anywhere that you can match those 2 types of territory. So it's cool because you just have so much more endless opportunities, especially early on in the game. There's so much you can do with that. As you play, it obviously gets a little tighter, which is appropriate because you want the game to get a little bit tighter and take a little more strategy as you get closer towards the end. But I mean, the tile placement, big win over Acquire as well. I got to give this round to Dawn of Ulos. One of my favorite mechanisms in this game where it actually builds upon Acquire is with Acquire, when you drop that tile, there's basically a winner. You know, there is the corporation that's going to overtake and absorb the other corporation. There's no manipulating that. In fact, when you place that tile, it doesn't even come into play until after the merger happens. So, I mean, it's just going to be what it's going to be with Acquire. But what's cool about Dawn of Ulos, you're going to have these different faction cards in your hand. You know, and like I said, instead of stocks in this game, you just have favor and factions. And your favor is how many you have. When 2 factions face off, all of the players get an opportunity to play a handful of cards, however many they'd like to, some or none, face down, and once everyone's played them, you're going to flip them over. These count as buffs in game. So if you had a faction that had a pretty clear win, the table could change that. So there's never a guaranteed win. When you have 2 factions facing off that are fairly close in power, it's truly anyone's battle. Even factions that are pretty large gaps, you'd be surprised at how easy those gaps close. And of course, some of the factions have abilities that trigger during those combat phases. It's very exciting. So this round 2, I gotta give it to Dawn of Ulos. Now, with all that being said, you would think I was describing the perfect Acquire killer. God, it should have been. But the truth is, we've got some issues here. They really had everything they needed to take the win here. But they got greedy. They kept adding and changing and manipulating it.
The dwarves delved too greedily and too deep.
Earlier, I mentioned Acquire was so brilliant because it was one of those games that kept it social. And what I mean is it's a game that has just enough on the board while leaving plenty of room for the player's interaction to be the rest of the game. And I'm not saying this doesn't have any of that. The absolutely brilliant designer who made this game, Dawn of Ulos, he should have sat down and played Acquire a few more times. I have a feeling he probably grew up on it and it held a special place, but he should have tried to cleanse his mind of it and try to replay it as he originally experienced the game, and he would have realized what made it so satisfying, because he lost a lot of that in this game. And I'm not saying this isn't a brilliant game. This truly is. This game's going to stay in my collection, but this is a battle where Dawn of Ulos just comes in, just haymaker, gut punch, just completely dominating in these early rounds, and Acquire just steps back, you know, DBZ smirk.
I'll find a way to destroy you!
And then just obliterates Dawn of Ulos. And it's because Acquire is a funner game. Acquire, for all of its misses in this fight, it stayed more fun. And at the end of the day, that's the most important mechanic of a board game, is the fun factor. I'm going to be honest, there's something else this game really missed at. And it's why the fun factor's not there. And that is, in Acquire, you get those businesses that start to run off with it, and it forces players to kind of have to rally up, against the player who's kind of in control of that business. This game, they worked so hard to balance the characters that they made the game too balanced. Acquire doesn't try to make a perfectly balanced game, so your players, the social just engineering of the game becomes that balancing factor, whereas this game tried really hard to balance the races and succeeded, and now you have a game that no one really takes off with it. Taking a huge win over another faction isn't that big of a deal. It's not like the biggest loss. No losses are gut-wrenching. No wins make you jump up and scream as you pulled off the impossible, and now good luck to everyone else catching up. No. The victories are smaller, and you need more of them. And at least you don't know who's really going to win till the end. So it is a great game in the respect that it really can be anyone's game all the way to the end, but Acquire, those gaps between growth of your corporations, that's where that fun lives, This game doesn't have much of that. Dawn of Ulos has run out of juice, and Acquire's still standing. Round 2 stays with Acquire. That leaves us with only one challenger. Shark, the oldest of the challengers today. First released in 1987, Shark is the most true to its predecessors of any of the other games today. And what I mean is, whereas the other games, Dawn of Ulos much more than Big Boss, really try to twist and change a lot of it, Shark picks only a few things. It keeps the heart of Acquire.
Heart of the cards. Guide me. Let's finish this.
Acquire.
The board folds out, and the first thing you notice is this is your board. This is your actual play area. That's a little disappointing. I'm going to be honest with you, especially for a game where you're all playing on the same board. I mean, I've got a pretty big table. We're almost going to have to pass this around, which obviously we can't actually do that. Buildings would go flying everywhere. But it causes you to have to kind of step up and reach over. They really should have come up with an alternative way for that. I mean, the other half of the board is really just a sideboard. In fact, it's not even a sideboard. This is just for placing your cards. You don't even need this on the board. This is the sideboard. This is nothing. This is just... I want to talk about the insert, which I do love. So, first of all, it's got just this perfect... How satisfying is that? Where the rule book just... I love it. I love it. Perfect size. And I love games that do this because, what happens is when the board goes on top, it holds that rule book down, and that rule book is acting to hold the rest of the components in place. That is genius. I love board games that use, the rule book as an extra way to hold your components in place. So, now I've talked about how much I love this old Ravensburger insert. Let's talk about the issues with the components, because they look like a children's toy and not a very great toy. I mean, again, if you thought Acquire looked like knockoff Legos, this is a whole different ball game. I mean, the little marker pieces, it misses. I mean, it really feels like a kid's game from the 80s, It's, more paper money. Yeah, Acquire dominates the component battle, which is saying a lot. The first big mechanic change of Shark, Dawn of Ulos takes out a ton of the random factor. Shark takes out a little less, but enough to make it very satisfying, to make it a significant upgrade from Acquire. So with Shark, you have these two dice. You have a green dice and a white dice. On the green dice, it goes 1 through 4, and then it has 2 shark fins. On the other dice, you have one color of the 4 different building types, And it has a white and a black building, which for the base game, you're just playing with those as wilds where you can actually choose which one you want to play. So it gives you a 2 in 6 chance at any color you'd like to choose. Very nice. You're basically going to roll this, and I got 4. So the numbers represent these 4 quadrants. The shark fin represents this shark territory in the middle. Let me show you why that is so satisfying. So if I rolled a red 4, that means I can place a red corporation anywhere in the 4 territory I want. And I'm not going to go through a whole rules teach here, but as you're building up corporations and you start treading into this shark area, you roll a shark fin, you could place it anywhere here. Why that's cool is that gives you a way to connect 4 to 1. So you can actually reach all the way to the other board as you're playing. And what happens is it turns into an absolute bloodbath. As these corporations start dipping into the shark territory, this is where they start reaching to do battle. So for example, you've got 2 3s here. If blue took its next turn, unlike acquire, the building you place is in play. So this just turned blue into 4, giving it the lead over red in that scenario. In this game, you actually remove the defeated not only from the board, but from the game, turning the lost pieces to the box so that corporation is now weaker for the rest of the game. A brilliant mechanic where it just completely adds to the strategy, makes the pressure of getting too close to another business, up there. Because if I am really deep into blue and I roll those dice and I get too close and it bites me, well, my stock can only go up so high now. It's a brilliant factor. So strategy-wise, with, taking out that random factor and giving a little bit more control of where you're going to place and how you're going to, am I going to start pushing this corporation closer to the shark pit, or am I going to back up and try to bolster a little bit first? Strategic wise, shark totally dominates over acquire. There's still a bit of randomness, but honestly just enough to keep it exciting. Again, this is also a game that doesn't take itself too serious, but it is more cutthroat than acquire by a margin. You're seeing corporations just completely eaten off of the board, losing pieces permanently for the game. Also, acquire is about which corporation is just going to keep growing until you just have all of these wells, whereas shark is just constantly cutting each other down. If your group, if they don't like that head-to-head factor of acquire, this game is absolutely not for your group. But if your group loves that, oh man, is this special. Every other player, like I said, that had those shares in that corporation loses how much that just dropped, which, in this case was 3,000, 3 times how many shares they currently have in that defeated corporation. So I have 10 stocks and that just dropped by $3,000. That's $30,000, which is a significant amount of money in this game. And that wasn't even a big hit. So every other player takes that loss immediately for the stocks. They keep their stocks, which is going to later have, put you in a place where how do I sell these stocks if now they're worthless? It's brilliant. With only 4 corporations, you'd probably be saying, well, surely everyone's going to have a little bit of every corporation. Wouldn't that hurt the player who just initiated that conflict too? No, this is where Shark truly shows off its aggression and earns its name and earns the title of the most Wolf of Wall Street board game ever made. Whoever initiates the conflict takes no financial loss. They only gain the benefits of the corporation that just grew. They gain no punishment, no matter how much stock they had in the other business, which creates this brilliant situation where someone with the most stock may be the one that tanks their own corporation just because enough other players have stock in that it's gonna hurt them. It's just creates so many layers of strategy that Acquire cannot compete with. It is diabolical and I love it. And if you know anything about how I like my board games, whoo, this is it. This is it. If you think Acquire is cutthroat, then Shark is... This is so much of what's important while missing on the things that are less important, but you still like to have. It made it so hard. I went back and forth for days on which game actually takes the win, you know, in that final. It is so close. It is a slugfest. They're both walking out hurt. But if I'm being honest, and I'm saying the better game, not the better game for the most people, just talking about the better game, Shark takes the win. It does. It's so hard to say that. And as crazy as it sounds, I still recommend you buy Acquire first. But if your group already loves, like, say, Splotter games, you can actually skip Acquire and go straight to Shark. Also, I wanted to mention that I'm aware of 3 different editions of Shark. The 2001 Ravensburger edition is the one I have. Usually you can find a copy on eBay for pretty cheap. Otherwise, it's a little harder to get your hands on. But if you watch around, you're going to find it on eBay. It's not going to break the bank. I love this copy. This is the copy I recommend. The second one I would choose if you're looking to splurge a little bit is the Korea Board Game Co. version. You're going to spend $100+ on it likely, and I don't know if I would say that it's quite worth it. Not that the game doesn't have $100 worth of gameplay, but the fact that they didn't upgrade any of the components, it almost makes me, in protest, not get the Korea Board Game Co. version. But I want to mention the 1987 version. It has, in my opinion, not only the coolest box of any of them, it's the coolest box art of almost any other game I've ever seen. I absolutely love it. I'm almost tempted to buy the 87 version just to move my components into that box. I would not play the 87 version over this version. In fact, I absolutely do not recommend getting that. If you can't find this one and you only find the 87 version, either suck it up and get the Korean version or wait. Reason being is the 87 version did not have the 4 quadrants with the shark pit in the middle. It had 6 zones, and basically you rolled a 6-sided dice, and one of those numbers was going to tell you which zone it was going to be in. So it keeps the corporations a little bit more at distances. It's not as easy to traverse to the other side. You kind of have to snake your way. It honestly makes it a little bit less, you know, in-your-face competitive when Shark is meant to be in-your-face competitive. And it's a game that if you wanted to declaw Shark a little bit, don't get the declawed version. You're not wanting Shark. Like, let's be honest, just play Acquire. Shark you get because you want the claws and the fangs. And the 87 version, it was the first edition. It's an old game. It's still a great game. But yeah, 100% this or the Korean version. So in summary, I'm giving the cage match victory to Shark. Shark comes out on top, even beating Acquire in my book, which is crazy to say. But I'm recommending both Acquire and Shark. I appreciate everyone watching. Please subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned earlier, we are planning a very big giveaway. Bus. This is the Deluxe 20th anniversary copy. The copy I have is my personal copy. Splotter and Capstone Games, when they did this was the Kickstarter Deluxe wooden components. Includes the original board, which is just beautiful. And then you had the retail version, which doesn't have that red banner, and it was cardboard components. Didn't have the original board. Absolutely love this game. My number 2 of all time. My copy will never leave my collection. I cannot recommend it enough. I've actually never even seen one still in shrink before. This is kind of tripping me out a little bit. But we're going to give this one away to one of our subscribers. So definitely subscribe. Definitely go for your chance to win Bus. And as I said earlier, I was going to give a quick description on how the rules work. I'm also going to post another video where I go into detail about it. But just in short, every one of my videos that you comment on, that will be one entry, and it's one comment per video. If you comment multiple times on the same video, it's not going to be multiple entries, but you can have multiple entries by commenting on different videos, and we'll pull the winner. I'm not exactly sure when, but we're going to let it build up a few comments, and someone will have bus shipped to them free of charge. This is US only for our winner. And that being said, thank you so much. End scene.